Michael Charlton, APAC Director for Entain. Thank you very much for being here with us here at the ASEAN Gaming Summit. It was great to hear your talk today, and I just wanted to go over some of the points that you had mentioned, as well as looking a little bit more at what's happening within sports betting in Asia. So Entain is obviously present in the major sports betting markets, the US being one of the primary and most exciting ones as well. But what's exciting about Asia for Entain?
Well, firstly, thank you, Kelsey, for inviting us along. It's wonderful to be at the ASEAN Gaming Summit again for the first time in a few years. So it's exciting that the industry, having gone into some sort of freeze for a few years, is opening back up again. What's exciting for Entain about being here is the potential for the region. Clearly, you've got a lot of individual territories with huge potential market out there, a propensity to be interested in betting and gaming and gambling. The challenge we've got with that, however, is obviously the regulatory side, because the Entain board has made it very clear that we will, by the end of this year, be completely removed or 99% removed from all unregulated markets. So that's any form of black market or grey market or anything that doesn't have full government approval. What's exciting, to answer the question, what's exciting therefore about Asia is that we have some governments over here from some potentially very big territories who are talking about regulating, talking about bringing in the sorts of legislation that would allow Entain to operate legally here. So yeah, the potential for the region is what's exciting, I would say.
That is what we've heard a lot of people talking about. They want to be moving towards compliance. That makes a lot more sense. We saw that just recently Cambodia also came off the FATF gray list, and it's very exciting news for the region in general, because in a regulated market, we can have those bigger players like Entain come in. And I think you mentioned something about when bigger players come in, they can then pave the way for smaller players?
Yeah, with the bigger players, the advantage we have is clearly a budget and an ability to spend more in a speculative way. So with no guarantee of getting a return on your investment, then for the smaller or even medium-sized player, they're looking for the lower hanging fruit. They're looking for a more guaranteed ROI than what you could get. And plus, some of these territories, you're talking about lobbying for years. It's, can be a very long-term play. But if the size of the prize is big enough, if the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow is big enough to make it worth that investment, then clearly that's something that would be interesting for Entain. And once that legislation exists, as you say, once that door's been broken down, once that barrier's been broken down, then that potentially makes it easier for the other players. If you look at a territory like Vietnam, the 2017 sports betting decree talks about a 5-year trial license for an individual operator. Now, if something like that were to come into force, then clearly whoever gets that exclusive 5-year license gets an advantage, but potentially at the end of that period, it's open house for any operator then. So I'd say that's the potential advantage of having some of the bigger players fighting the initial battles in the war, if that makes sense.
Well, but there's so many different jurisdictions, and obviously each one of them has their own legal frameworks. How is it to try and come up with that legislation? I think there's something about you could kind of have more or less 20%, which is kind of a one-size-fits-all, and then it's then individually done by country?
Other way around, I would say. Yeah, if you have 80% where sports betting, ultimately, football is football. Soccer is soccer, basketball is basketball,
unless
ping pong is ping pong. Yeah, so let's call it soccer is soccer wherever you go. And therefore, you can develop and innovate around that product, but ultimately the core product is the same. So you develop rules around that core product, and those are rules that could apply everywhere. If you look at what's successful, then eventually there'll be a load of innovation, but it will funnel into the most successful products. So then you can legislate around those products. So if you go to an individual territory, be it country X in Asia, then you can say, look, 80% of this are just soccer rules, soccer legislation, the sort of soccer bets that you should allow. And that could come down to whether it's simply pre-match or betting in play. You know, those are the kind of differences and subtleties that they might want to legislate on. But with modern betting systems, there's, you know, you're talking about instant reactions to things. So there's no reason not to allow the full sports book. It's just what the government of the territory would be most comfortable with. So we can adapt that 20%, say, look, if you're not comfortable with bet in play, for example, if you don't fully trust the systems, we'll hide that for now. Let's legislate for what you're comfortable with, and then we can always change it as you go along.
That's interesting you mentioned that, because it does seem like we're shifting completely from the pre-match bet to the in-game play. Do you think that is going to be the only way forward now, or are we still going to see some of that pre-match betting?
Oh, I think pre-match betting will always exist, but as we discussed on the stage earlier, if you look at the type of betting that the Asian market tends to prefer, it's a quick, it's a win-lose, it's a yes-no, it's a black-white, it's a red-green. You know, that's
not
the
that
sort of
prolonged delay of the.
So the idea of an anti-post market where you put the bet on at the beginning of the season, and if the Cowboys win at the end of the season 6 months later, you're a winner. That's not the market that will have the greatest appeal in Asia.
Which is still very popular in the United States.
But it's still hugely popular, And where I come from in the UK, it's still a hugely popular market. But if you look at adapting your products for the Asian market, then again, Macau, a market you know very well, you see them going in and playing sick bow and products like that. It's yes, no.
Immediate gratification.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where the bet in play comes in. But of course, you need the systems that are sophisticated enough, because if you get targeted by people who know what they're doing and you don't have the right systems in place, then you as an operator can be challenged very hard, shall we say. But with the modern systems in place, there's no reason not to have those markets available.
I've got a question which is coming a bit from left field, to use a sports reference there. There was a talk here the other day about AI and the potentials for AI on both.
I saw Frank's discussion with Harman about it.
Very interesting.
Very interesting.
How that could potentially give advantages to players and also to operators. In terms of their discussion, it was skewed more towards right now the player has the advantage. How can Entain kind of look at that and then mitigate any possible influence so that maintains a playing field for everyone?
Kelsey, that's so far out of my sphere of influence. That's very. I mean, all I'd say
is it something that Entain is concerned about and should be keeping an eye on?
I mean, whether it's concern is probably too strong a word, but then we've always had trading challenges over the years. You know, you're always looking at an operator versus player. Dynamic that suggests, of course, the player's trying to get an advantage, and of course, the operator's trying to stay ahead. You know, if you go back, sadly, I go back many, many years, but if you go back to almost the pre-computerized era, then and as that came in, you developed algorithms that were able to identify issues and deal with them much more quickly, which began to remove some of the player advantage. So then what does the player do? The player looks at the next new thing, which is AI. So all I can say is we have departments within Entain who its job is to innovate and look at what is being innovated and then come up with a way to make the best for the company out of that. And that might be that innovation is something new for the customer, and it's, a positive thing in terms of the service and the offering that we're giving. Or it might be that that's something to try and maintain our profit margins, which allow us to continue to offer the same products and not take products away from customers who enjoy them and bet in a way that we're happy with because of something new that's come in that maybe only has an advantage for a very select group of customers.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because what they did mention as well was a lot of it is about trust and knowing, for example, within obviously a large-scale company such as Entain with its track record, the customer knows that they can trust that company to be delivering the consistent product and to be paying out, and vice versa, having established a long-term relationship with the customers so that Entain can trust that they can then be moving forward with them. Moving back very quickly to regulation and Asia, that type of trust has been very key moving forward. But looking at the individual markets right now, do you see that there's one country in particular which is establishing that right type of framework that would allow Entain to want to move back into this region a bit more?
I mean, there are lots of examples out there. It would be very easy to sit here and be negative, but equally you can turn those things into a positive. Probably best I don't. So let me focus on the positive. And we've heard from the licensing director and the chairman of PAGCOR in the last couple of days. So clearly I'm in the Philippines, I'm going to be nice, but I think there's a lot to be nice about. Yeah. When you hear what they've said, and the positive attitude they're taking to it, and the proactive attitude that they're taking to it. Because I think it would be easy to be critical of governments who just put their head in the sand and say, well, if we don't discuss this problem, it doesn't exist. Yes. The problem being illegal gaming and how that there's no protection for the customer, there's no corporate social responsibility, there's no tax raised, there's no welfare. So I think what PAGCOR is doing in the Philippines is fantastic in that they're acknowledging the issue and they're looking to take steps forward with actually legislating this and doing it properly. It's not a simple journey, as we've discussed, and there's lots of different nuances for individual territories, but I think what they're doing is great. The fact that Malaysia has talked about doing it, and the previous government, unfortunately the one that was that lost the election in November, they've also recognised the benefits of doing it. They've acknowledged that there's an illegal industry out there, and they've said that digital betting as a way of raising taxes post-COVID is a sensible thing to do. Yeah. So that's positive. The Vietnamese sports betting decree has been on the cards for many years, and again, it's acknowledging that there is such a massive grey market out there. Why not let's do it properly? But then, you know, when you have to get these legislations through Parliament, as we discussed with Japan or South Korea or Thailand, as Patrick discussed on stage, or Myanmar, you know, these things can be a long slog, but hopefully in a few years we'll start to see the benefit of the groundwork that's being laid now.
Well, thank you. I mean, we covered a lot of territory, and we've got even more from your talk before as well. Exciting times here in Asia for sports betting, and I hope that you guys can start to be getting more of those regulated markets as they come.
So do I, because that'll keep me in a job.
Good. Me too. Yeah. All right, well, thank you very much for being with us.
No worries. Thank you, Kelsey. Cheers.